welcome everyone. Thanks for joining. We are going to start and, as always, launch our poll. Just to ask everyone to kind of check in where you all are, how you're feeling right now, and then we'll turn it over to our hub member, Evan Holloway, to lead a brief mindfulness and then introduce our speaker.
All right. I see some people are still joining. I think we can go ahead and get started with the mindfulness activity. So I'll ask everyone to consider what will make you most comfortable right now. If that means turning off your camera, that's fine, or you can keep it on. But I'll ask you to take a few sort of deep breaths and rest your eyes in a comfortable, at sort of a comfortable gaze, and pay attention to your feet and how they're connecting with the ground. After you've had an opportunity to take a few breaths, I want you to think about something that has positively impacted you over the past week. Could be something sort of small, something really big, just something that has positively impacted you. I'd like you to reflect on how it has impacted you and why you're grateful for that impact. Think about how that act or that occurrence has supported you personally, professionally, maybe as a member of your community. I'll give you a little time to sit with that as you pay attention to your body, your thoughts, and feelings. Now, as you sit with that experience, think about how you can pay it forward to others in your life in different domains and continue to have a positive impact on others, even in a very small way. Take one or two more deep breaths. Bring your attention back to our current activity. All right. Everybody could turn, if you're able to, turn your cameras on. That would be awesome. So now I'm going to introduce our distinguished speaker today. James Brown was a school social worker in Michigan for 13 years, where he began understanding intervention work related to school bullying. James then shifted into earning a PhD focused on parent experiences when reporting school bullying. James has conducted program evaluations on bully prevention programs and continues to be active in the bully prevention research community. He's currently an associate professor of social work at Indiana University, Bloomington. He's also a dear friend of mine, and we appreciate your time and expertise here, James. So I'll go ahead and pass it to you.
All right. Well, hello, everyone. And I'm thinking that if today in this next hour, if one kid that you work with or have some connection to gets helped by this because you've been informed maybe in a way that has been helpful, all this has been absolutely worth it. And um, that is my hope that at least one person. So, although I have objectives, that really is an important objective to disclose. Speaking of disclosures, I have no financial interests in anything to do with what I'm about to share with you. Um, Evan, do I read the whole screen or is it
Just say
self-evident?
that CAP is supported by HRSA and state funds as well through California Department of Health Care Services. That should be good, James. Go ahead.
Thank you. All right. So Evan talked about my professional background. So I have both the experience of being a school social worker and working with youth, particularly middle school youth, well, and also elementary youth, regarding um, bully prevention, also peer mediation. And so it was a real eye opener when I got into my PhD program and really started digging deeper into understanding the research around bullying. And I think what really stands out here is when we talk about bullying, it's not like this um, straight line. There's a lot of tentacles to bullying. Who's involved, the supporting cast, all sorts of members, the parenting system or the caregiver system, the school and the ethos that these kids go into. There's a lot of dimensions that are happening all at once. So I just want to acknowledge that's where I'm coming from. And also, um, my background is thinking like in a systems and ecological perspective, that there's a lot of stakeholders involved in a bullying incident. Um, if it's happening on the bus, um, there's a bus driver involved somehow in this. So um, thinking about that from a systems perspective is where I'm coming from in this presentation. The learning objectives today, amongst other things, will be to describe the importance of determining the type of aggression, such as harassment versus bullying versus peer conflict. So we'll talk about that. Identifying 3 steps caregivers will use to effectively address bullying with school officials. And when I say that, I'm looking for you folks as advocates, you folks as teachers, to maybe help be the guides for these parents or caregivers in order to make sure that they're not wasting their time, effort, and energy um, by being efficient. Okay. And then lastly, practice using a school-based tool that can be implemented for children and youth who are regressing. So that's our learning objectives. I just wanted to do a check-in before leaping forward here. What are some of the concerns you currently face regarding school bullying? Because it's a pretty big thing, and I'm just kind of wondering from your perspectives, could we take a few minutes here and hear from you if anyone would like to share? I think I may have surprised a few people.
Please unmute yourself. Jump in.
Sure. Hi, I'm Mary. And most of my career has been in school nursing. And I would say that one of the biggest concerns and most persistent is that a lot of bullying is very subtle. And it's often hard for adults to observe it happening. So kids are coming in, getting hurt, they have their own story. But when confronting the the bullier, they will deny. And so sometimes it's really hard for adults, I think, to um, have concrete interventions when we're often not sure of what's going on until it escalates.
Yeah, yeah, so well noted. It even though it's pervasive, it can be just slide under the radar. And that's what I think makes bullying, in part, so potent, especially if it's not being recognized by the adult world, or, oh, it's just kids being kids, or whatever. But it's really having an adversive impact on a kid and even wanting to come to school. Thank you, Mary. Anyone else have any current concerns?
There's some things coming through the chat about racism, homophobic, racist, and newcomer, immigrant youth can be a fracturing, and place individuals and groups and systems at odds. Sometimes teachers may not be aware. Maybe they even are part of the bullying.
Yeah, especially like if they respond to it by laughing it off or turning it into a joke. Really harmful impacts,
Yeah,
for kids on the receiving end of that. Mhm.
my name is Amanda Wilson. I'm also a school nurse, and I feel like some of my concerns are um, in regards to access to um, the ability to bully. So it's not even just like bullying happening at school, but oftentimes what I see is that students will come to the health office because they're not well or hiding essentially from somebody who maybe made threats on social media or via Snapchat or um, another way where staff aren't going to like there's no way that we could identify some of those things, especially like Snapchat messages, how they vanish. Um, and then also, I feel like, sure, there's some physical bullying. I feel like it's mostly like psychological, like mental health, like stuff in terms of their mental health that I see in my area.
Yeah. And again, that part of it disappearing and not having an evidence trail, perhaps, but it having that psychological effect, right? Of maybe not wanting to come to school, hiding, as you had mentioned. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then another thing that we notice is even if bullying is addressed, I feel like there's a lack of accountability, not just with students, but with parents, like the adult support system in their life, who maybe will turn the blame to another area. So it's not like it's hard in that respect to figure out what to do.
Yes, yes. My research also reflects that. And we're going to talk about that, Amanda. We are going to talk about both of those issues here. So I hope I touch on them and then we have some further conversation on that.
Yes, we will have
I
opportunity.
have a question.
Yeah, someone said, is some bullying racist? And we're going to talk about that in the form of harassment. So we'll get to that in just a bit here as well.
I had a
Okay. Any?
question.
Mhm.
Theo, as Mary mentioned earlier, that there's some bullying that is not noticed by, I don't know, authority figures, um, by the adults who are caring for the children. And so I'm wondering if there's like a multi-tier level of types of bullying, that are some types of bullying um, less harmful than other types of bullying or more harmful. I don't really know.
Ah,
And what about a multi-tiered response to bullying?
yeah. And we will address that. I guess how I'd like to respond, Julie, is, when we think about the continuum, like um, friends teasing each other and one not knowing that they're really impacting the other and not having that awareness, versus bullying, which we'll talk about the definition, versus like a higher grade of violence, So bullying is considered, at least in the research, a low-grade violence, unless it's your kid that's getting bullied, right? But that's what it is considered. Think about um, being stabbed with a knife. That's an assault. That is an attempt at something. So you always want to go with um, the highest label basically you can give it. So if it is a sexual assault, but it was based on bullying, we're going to go with sexual assault. That's going to have the most grip. So yeah, that continuum we'll talk a little bit about. Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, my name is Letitia. I'm at a high school,
Hey,
where
Letitia.
I'm a mental health clinician where I happen to see the bullying a little bit more, has a more sexual content to it. So you're right in saying that we're not going to look at it as bullying, but we'll look at it as a sexual assault, harassment, and so forth.
Mhm.
And we're pushing out those type of presentations in psychoeducation. But it just seems that these older kids just get meaner in their harassment and their bullying, even on social media. So that is what I tend to observe and see.
You know, and
And
what we, oh, yeah, I was just going to say that it shows, studies are showing that when it's not dealt with when kids are at a young age, it's going to get more sophisticated. It's going to get bigger. It's going to become more adversive as they age through this. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the outcomes for these folks, unless we are able to do something meaningful.
Awesome.
Okay, Evan?
I was going to say, I think you're probably going to address a lot of these too in your content. And there will be time for more questions too.
All right, that sounds good. So I'm going to go over a few slides. If you'd like to respond to anything, let me know, or we can wait till the end. Either way is fine. So there's some new research on bullying, and adult interventions can be effective, especially in those younger years. So when kids report and adults take serious action, we'll talk with what serious action may be, that it can be very effective. That bullying children are found to have delayed brain development. They're called bully impacted brain regions, especially um, the right side of the brain, executive functioning. That the they're finding that when they do MRIs, that part of the right side of the brain is actually swelling compared to non-bullied kids. And they're thinking that's a way that the brain is responding. And in doing so, these kids are having poor reading, writing, and grammar skills, sometimes 6 to 9 months behind a comparative group that isn't being bullied. So telling an adult, reporting to an adult, us, those who experienced severe bullying appeared to have fewer internalizing problems than those who chose not to tell, suggesting a protective function by telling an adult. Another protective function too is having a close friend, you know, throughout all this. That is a really big protection for youth. Students less severely bullied who told an adult were less likely to be bullied a year later. But those who are chronically bullied, their outcome, that bullying was likely to continue. So kids who are kind of chronic bulliers, or they're both bullying and being victimized, those are the folks with the lowest psychosocial outcomes. They kind of get it at both ends. Usually those kids too are really impulsive and aren't really thinking through some of their actions, so they're or unable to slow it down and think through their actions, which just exacerbates the bullying. I want to share this slide because I think this really speaks to me about the caring about that kid who is bullied. So when we look at kids who are bullying at age 14, we can predict with some certainty here violent convictions between ages of 15 and 20. Kids who bully at age 14, self-reported violence at ages 15 and 18, a low job status at age 18, not the end of the world, but still a finding, drug use at age 27 through 32, and unsuccessful life at age 48. So I think if we reframe, if we see a kid bullying, I think it's important to say, wow, this is a symptom bearer. This kid is bearing some symptom that is going on. Maybe it's connected with the family, maybe the friendship group, but something is amiss here. Something, and there's an opportunity for intervention. So someone asked about harassment and bullying, the continuum as we shared. So I just want to say that with bullying, California has a state statute, and it's hyperlinked here. You'll get this if you haven't gotten it already. It's supported by the state, so there's language behind it. It's a statute. We have nothing on the federal level for bullying. Barack Obama tried to get some traction on this, but our supporting cast of Congress and senators chose not to take him up on it. But when we say, like, what is bullying specifically? A person or persons are intentional, wanting to mess you up, wanting to put harm on a person. And that person, maybe because there's three of us and one of them, or maybe it's a kid in a lower grade or a smaller person, a person who doesn't have a friendship network, but has lesser power to be able to defend themselves. And it's not just a one and done. This is repeated. And by repeated, we mean if someone says, makes a threat to someone, like, I'm going to kick your ass, blah, 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 blah. And that person believes that that threat is going to be followed through, that can be considered repeated. So repeated sense of harm, this person doesn't feel like they can defend themselves. That's really what bullying is by definition. So when we talk about harassment, now that is protected at the federal level. As a matter of fact, there's even a phone number to call if a parent or anything has any questions regarding someone's age, sex, race, disability, or identity. Someone brought up immigrant kids. So this can be something that the school really has to take note of, because with the federal government, and I haven't had to call this number, so I don't know, how reliable it is, but it's there. There's quite a bit with the Civil Rights Division when you look at harassment. So yeah, and the other thing too is it doesn't have to include tend to harm. If it harmed, that's considered harassment. Even if the intent wasn't. And it doesn't have to have the power imbalance. So it's a little broader in some ways. I think it has a little bit more legality to it. So when I looked at what constitutes bullying in California, so this is the umbrella in which all of you are under, because this is supposed to be applied to the state. So notice the language here. Any severe, pervasive physical or verbal act or conduct, including communications made in writing or means of an electronic act committed by a pupil or group of pupils directed toward one or more pupils, has the effect on just one or more of the following: placing a reasonable pupil or pupils in fear or harm to that pupil or pupil's person or property. So fear of harm, causing a reasonable pupil. it's interesting. We can tell that lawyers have written this. Like, what is versus an unreasonable pupil, right? Okay. Causing a reasonable pupil to experience a sustainable, substantially detrimental effect on a pupil's physical or mental health, causing a reasonable pupil to experience substantial interference with their academic performance, and lastly, causing a reasonable pupil to experience substantial interference with the pupil's ability to participate and benefit from the services, activities, privileges provided by the school. One or more of these, from a California perspective, that's what schools are calling bullying. That's what the legal system, your state, is calling bullying. Now, if we peel that off, and let's say a parent does go the legal route, it's brutal. It's under tort law, so it's kind of the civil claim. It usually takes 2 to 3 years to sort out. And parents who I have talked to at conferences who have done this felt wrecked. That was the word that one of them used, felt wrecked by the process, because it's sit and wait, sit and wait, sit and wait. And it's like being in a pressure cooker for them. So although it's the law and so forth, it's not an easy path to go down. But we can still use it as leverage, and we'll talk about that in just a bit. Some of the unique little components of California anti-bullying statute. Off-campus cyberbullying, is that covered? Yes, that is covered in the statute. If it's off campus and someone's doing any texting or any kind of electronic use stuff that is creating a bullying environment, especially when that kid comes back to school, the school must follow through with that. What about mental health services? The statute says yes, the school must provide some mental health services within the school's capacity. It's encouraged. So encouraged, a little different language than must provide. They use the word encouraged. And to me, that's kind of a legal go around to maybe not have as strong of support for parents. That's just my bias, I guess. And then informing parents. This is a big one. A lot of the research I did with parents whose child was being bullied, they didn't, how they discovered was not through the school. It was more through the child's behaviors, kicking their favorite cat, not wanting to eat dinner, just different behaviors, and then fleshing it out as to what was going on. Some of the bullies, the kids who were doing the bullying, the parents said, this has been going on for 2 years and I didn't even hear about it. The school never contacted me. So this is a big deal, informing parents. And I hope we can keep that in mind, because when we think of parents, they can be advocates, and sometimes they need a little coaching, a little guidance. So hopefully we can provide that here. So when we look at anti-bullying programs, which every school in California is supposed to adopt some program, could be Kiva, could be Olvis. There's literally 100 programs, over 100 programs out there that can be used. They are showing a positive effect, both in reducing a kid being bullied by 15 to 17%, but also from bullying around that same level. So anywhere from 15 to 20%, it's having an impact. But maybe what's more important is it has an ethos, a school language about bullying, especially in elementary schools. So some of the components to these bully prevention programs that have been shown to be effective: parent training, information for parents, and especially important early on, but we can't forget the middle school part either, especially because the hierarchy is getting changed around. Something happens drastically from 6th to 7th grade. I don't know what's in the water or what happens over that summer period, but seventh graders really have a hard time with bullying behaviors. So that was my own personal experience in the state of Michigan. Increased playground supervision has been shown to be very effective. And when we think of playground, unstructured, right? A lot of unstructured play, hallways, unstructured. So transition places and spaces, very important. Disciplinary methods that are used. And when I talk about disciplinary, I'm not talking about punishment. I'm talking about the ability to teach through, if this is the issue, you're bullying, what can help teach that student about the effects of this, and maybe look at alternate behaviors to get what they want without violating the rights of others. School conferences, really important, pep rallies, whatever. And again, it's part of a school ethos. This isn't a determining factor, but if everyone knows the language, if there's some testimonials, even from outside folks coming in, that can have a boosting effect to the program. Classroom rules and management need to really explicitly talk about bullying, and we have to walk the talk on that as educators. So does anyone have any questions so far before I jump into the investigation process?
Sure, James, this is Mary.
Hey, Mary.
Hi. I posted two questions in the chat. One was about when you were talking about state and federal definitions. It reminded me of Title IX, and I was wondering about some of the overlap with Title IX, especially because Title IX is a federal law, and whether that could cover, some types of bullying. And then the other question was under effective program components, what the research is showing about SEL, social emotional learning, and whether you also have a position on that.
Yeah. Let's start with social emotional learning. I was just on a dissertation committee, and I can tell you that it's really good. It's really good. It's about competency. It's about self-regulation, self-awareness. Yeah, I really think this is a great piece of bully prevention. I know that bully prevention programs are starting to integrate more of the social learning components. But one of the key variables is that the teacher has to be invested in that. And I guess that's a key variable for everything, right? Like leadership having an investment that this is what we're going to do, and some agreement with the teachers that this is what we're going to do. So when we think about a family system, and there's a school building, and if it's in conflict, I want this. Well, this subgroup who's very loud and disruptive, we don't want this. This isn't part of teaching, It can really ruin, even though there was money allocated, a program was bought. There really needs to be buy-in to that. And what was your first question again? Title IX, yeah. So yes, it did come from Title IX. That was such a landmark decision. I think back in '72, it really changed the direction of how schools see individuals, especially females. Yeah. So I hope I answered that okay. All right. So sometimes my research, when I talk to school officials, principals, social workers, counselors, they will say that most of the investigation that we do, it's pure conflict. It's not bullying. Huh. So this is from an Indiana perspective. So what is pure conflict? Well, kids being mad or upset towards one another. Maybe they were friends and someone didn't get invited over to someone else's house and they're really upset. And although it's emotional and upsetting, it may not be bullying. This is a conflict. They're trying to work it out. They may need help working it out. They may need a third person to get involved and to work that out. So a lot of times when school officials have to investigate, they will say it didn't meet those 3 requirements of bullying, intentional harm doing, repeated. So they'll say, we're going to go through conflict resolution. We're sending them to our conflict resolution person to work that out. That often happens. Hopefully, they assess that correctly, because if it is bullying and they go under peer conflict resolution kind of stuff, it can be damaging to the kid who's being targeted. And it may not give the results that are needed. Number 3, so how do situations of peer conflict in school get addressed? I think I already really kind of spoke of that. Here is some of the research I did that school officials talked about how they are influenced by the Indiana state statute. And I think this is pretty universal. We have a state statute here on bully prevention. The school districts then has a definition, a policy and procedure. Where is that? In the student handbook. If you look under bullying or harassment, you will find it in the student handbook. It's usually online at the school. That's really important for us as helpers to parents and caregivers, that they understand that. We'll get to that in a bit, though. I digress. So the school principal usually has a team, and this team is made up sometimes of social workers, a counselor, whoever they can find that has some training, hopefully with school bullying. And those folks do an investigation. Now, the school principal, it's important because a lot of times when parents go to a school, they don't know who to report bullying to. Sometimes it's the counselor. Sometimes it's the front desk person who refers them to a social worker. Reporting it to the school principal, I cannot say strongly enough. Who's the disciplinarian in the school? It's probably not the social worker. If it is, they're in a dual role. Not the counselor. The disciplinarian is usually the vice principal. Do they have vice principals in California? Okay. So that's the person the parent can make contact with, or caregiver can make contact with, the principal. Go straight to the head. So the investigative team looks at it, makes a determination. Was it bullying or peer conflict? If it's bullying, contacting the students and parents get done here in Indiana. They are taking that very serious. Also, the parent, the student, school meeting may happen, school counseling, some disciplinary action. I don't particularly think suspending someone for bullying is necessarily the right thing unless it's putting the target in harm's way. If it hasn't been dealt with, and we'll talk about that. Another intervention for peer conflict is peer mediation or conflict resolution. So this is how, when we look at bullying and peer conflict, that's how it usually goes down. So
James,
yeah,
jump in real quick. I'm sorry to cut you off. We're running a little behind because there's a lot of rich stuff here. I'm wondering if you're open to it. Could we jump to the tool, kind of the resource, the Google form, and you could introduce it, and we could use that as an example to jump into our case-based learning. Would that be okay?
yeah, it would. Could I?
But yeah,
because I already talked about
don't
this
want to mess up
slide.
your
but
flow
this-
though, if there's something you feel is essential.
Well, for those physicians out there who may be in the audience, or nurses who may be in the audience, a physician's letter to the school, if a kid is being symptomatic of anxiety, um, is important. And I give a kind of a template here. Of course, as a parent would have to do a release, but this is a way of leveraging some power behind um, the parent here to say, this is really serious. This needs to happen. So I won't read you the letter, but basically the etiology is from the school environment. I believe these symptoms could successfully be addressed if the school bullying situation as defined by California state law and the handbook were assertively addressed. So this is an example we can give to parents because a lot of these kids go into the doctor, oh, my stomach's sore every time school starts, right? So yeah. So just a real quick on the caregiver. Caregiver, have they submitted all the evidence to the principal via email? The school has responded. What steps will be taken, by when and by whom? So the caregiver needs to know that who's going to do it, by when and by whom. Principal met with targeted child and aggressor separately, not together, but separately, went over the plan. So will this end my child's bullying? What if the principals say there's nothing more we can do, which showed up in my research quite a bit? We can give parents or caregivers this. Principals making contact with bullied child caregiver. Have you done that, sir or ma'am or whoever? Behavior improvement contract, which we're going to go over in just a second. Behavioral health assessment for person who is bullying. Hallway monitoring. Scheduled check-in by school official with the target to assess if the threatening behavior has stopped after the intervention. That follow-up piece is essential. Yeah, that is essential. Remove bullying child from the environment, not the target. So a lot of times in research, what we're finding is kids who are bullying are allowed to continue in class while the other kid gets moved out of class, the kid who's being targeted, or the kid who's being bullied out by their locker is getting moved to a lesser grade section's locker. Why is not the bully being addressed for they're the ones creating these adverse negative behaviors in the school environment. So, okay. So this is what Evan was hoping we'd get to, and here we are. So I'd like to ask all
And
of you.
James, just to interrupt really quickly. So today we're gonna shift off of our typical case-based learning, where we have someone present a case and we go through the ecstasis brainstorming, and we're instead going to do the case-based learning together through this activity. So just wanted to provide that context.
Okay. So let me just move something here. So I'm going to ask you to look and read this. And I want you to picture yourself as a seventh grader. And I want you to picture yourself as this person. You're not really, obviously, but just picture yourself as that you have done this. And I'm going to present a tool to help school officials work with that person, work with you in addressing the behaviors. So I have to pull this up. Take a moment to grab it. Okay, so I'm going to send this in the chat here. Send, link, shorten. Thank you for waiting, everyone. So here is, I want you to picture that you're the seventh grader, and it's been found that you did this, that this has been substantiated. And the principal has said you need to fill out this form. And we're going to have to share it with your parent just to let them know what's going on and what improvements you're looking to make. You have any questions? Nope. So there it is. Can everyone get to the form okay?
James, I think that might be the wrong, it was a contact information link, but it didn't look like the form we reviewed earlier.
Oh, okay. Let me, hold on, folks. Maybe it's, oh, okay. Thanks, Evan. I'm going to
Yeah,
resend. Good catch.
all good.
All right. Boom, boom. Here you go. So I just want you to walk yourself through this. I will be put a fake name, if you would, or just your first name, because I'll delete all the data at the end, but I just want you to go through this and provide some feedback of what it was like for you as a person who was in this situation of bullying and walking through this and then having to negotiate this with the principal. So go ahead and just take a moment and do that, and we'll talk about it.
It should, the form I just copied should be the correct link now. Sorry about that.
Yep. The behavior change plan should be the heading.
Awesome. I just filled mine out. I don't know if others have had a chance to go through. Um, yeah, that was really, really informative, James.
Yeah. As people may be filling theirs out, Evan, could you talk about what you noticed about that process, being the person, your seventh grade self, in the unfortunate situation you found yourself in?
It was an opportunity to just reflect and think about why I did something, how it impacted others. And I really like the concrete plan for who's going to help me, right? It felt like it took some of the pressure off of like, this is just something that I have to manage on my own if I get angry. So I really liked that.
Yeah, so you talked about that cognitive part. It was concrete. There were actions that you were going to have to take in order to make sure that the school environment was safe. Was there any other parts though? And anyone can chime in.
Hi, this is
Miss-
Mary again.
Hi, Mary.
Yeah, I actually liked the part about reflecting on feelings, like
Yeah.
how I thought the student who was being bullied felt. I think that helps to develop some emotional intelligence and empathy. So that was a nice part of it.
Yes, yes. And that discipline to teach. So we're teaching both the cognitive part, but the social emotional part, those feelings. And we're making that connection with those two. This is really important because if it's just up here, it's probably going to go. It's probably just, you know, when it's when you can make that connection with feelings and cognitions, it's much more potent. Yeah. Did anyone think, oh, this was rubbish, or I thought this was a useless thing, da 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 da. I love pushback. So this any school could use. Um, it could be set up with the school. It could be set up to copy to a parent. Maybe the parent would need to sign off on this. Maybe the kid would need to negotiate this plan with the principal in order to get back into that environment in which they were creating the havoc in. So if it was the hallway environment, this plan is going to address that, how you're going to be safe with these people in the hallway or this person in the hallway, and also other areas. But yeah, I got to watch this work in or a version of it. I've modified it quite a bit for 4 years, and even oppositionally defiant kids would have a slow turning around in improving behaviors. But it really did work, and it keeps a digital trail for the school, gets the parents involved. So you have child, parent, and school disciplinarian. Maybe there's a social worker, maybe there's a school nurse, maybe there's other folks involved in that. But those are the three primary folks. So, all right. Also for advocacy, if you feel like the parent isn't going anywhere with the school administration, there's the principal's boss going up the flagpole, the school flagpole, the superintendent. And I encourage parents to start out with, I need your help. I need my child to be safe in school, and maybe a positive. I've had really good success with my other two children in school and da 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 da, but I'm having trouble with this child. Kristen, looks like you have your hand up. No?
I was just wondering about as I'm looking at this, one of the things I'm thinking about is how much of bullying has transitioned into the virtual world. And I'm looking at this thinking, yeah, this actually could be a useful tool for, bullying that's taking place online. which I think a lot of it does now. But I don't know if that would be more of a challenge in terms of school personnel like verifying that. And so I'm curious about how if you've used this for online bullying behaviors, and if you've seen it as effective.
Yeah, when principals or their team investigate, they do need evidence. They have to have evidence in order to substantiate. Um, so even if they can have some evidence, but maybe not all the evidence, maybe someone in the group admits, yeah, we were getting carried away, and we did say so and so was having sex with, so and so, or whatever. That's evidence. It's been substantiated. So yes, to answer your question, it can be used. The full evidence may not be there, but the student is still starting to address what it is that they're doing. And I want you to think about bullying is when a bully can knock down a wall and keep going and keep going and keep going without hitting the wall and falling back, they're going to keep going. I mean, that we've seen it over and over again. Donald Trump, perhaps, is the existential person, the threat. When we think about bullying, like, I don't think anyone stopped him all along the way, and he is still going and doing that. If you help the bully hit the wall and take a step or two back and reflect on what it is that they're doing and how they're doing it, and that it's not okay, and you've addressed it, and you've checked in with the target maybe 2 weeks after, how is it going? That is, as far as a bully intervention goes, that's really tight.
Thanks so much,
So,
James. I just want to, for those who have to leave right at 3:30, I'd like us to launch our poll just so folks can give feedback before they hop off. And thank you, May, for putting in the links for continuing ed credit in the chat. And then many of us, like Hub team members, can stay on until 3:45 so we can do more of this Q&A too. Okay, I'll turn it back to you, James.
all right. So, in our way of advocating, we talked about the superintendent. So that would be the second flag on the flagpole. Principal, superintendent. And if that doesn't work, even in my position as a school social worker, I would encourage parents to go to the school board if their child was not being taken seriously about the bullying situation. It was still going on. Because there's a point at the school board meeting where, are there any comments from the public? And this is an important time again where the parent can say, yeah, I'm so-and-so. Start out with a positive so people's trust gates are open and willing to listen at the school board. And then, however, my oldest daughter or my youngest daughter is being bullied. And these are the things that I've done to try to address it. This is who I've spoken to. The bullying is still continuing. I know this school wants to be a safe school. It says it right on the banner as you walk in the door. But that's not happening right now. And I need someone to take my child's bullying seriously at this school. And I asked the parent to stay in the audience to be one of the last people to leave, because inevitably board members won't say anything then and there usually, but they will come up as people start to clear out, and they will, on average, talk with that parent and find out what's going on. So those are really 3 tiers of intervention there that we want to leverage with our folks who are trying to advocate for their kids. All right, so that's really it. That's what I had to present. I hope can I get some feedback from you? Was there anything helpful that you found in this?
I learned a lot, but I would encourage folks to unmute themselves, see if feedback, or ask some of the questions that were in the chat. It was really great, James. Thank you.
Thank you.
Saw a chat. I think the questionnaire was a concrete tool to use. Yes, this was helpful.
Good. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I,
Mhm.
go ahead.
Oh, well, I was just going to say it's based on perceptual control theory, the questionnaire, and that the child wants control over certain situations, but maybe going about it very dysfunctionally, exercising power and control over others, and having to relearn how to negotiate that and get it without violating the rights of others. What's up, Amanda?
Oh, I was just curious, how this, like how early, I noticed like the grades to select in the questionnaire were like 4th through 7th grade. And like if the intervention works at the like high school level, or is that too far past like the stages of
No,
like, are they
it
too
does
engaged?
work. It does work. Yeah, you can change the language, make it a little bit more developmentally salient for students. Also for younger kids, instead of words, you can do pictures or smiley faces or sad faces or whatever. So there's total adjustments that can be made to this depending on the developmental need. And, if the person needs help with it, filling it out, hopefully there's someone there. Our school had someone who was dedicated in running that program. It was called the Responsibility Thinking Center, and just did a really great job. And like I said, for 4 years, as much as I loved my work and so forth and all the things that were going on, I think this really had a big impact on changing behavior, changing school climate, changing. So bullies like to externalize. Well, it was him. But John, what were you doing? What were you doing? Right? So it's not, so it stops the bully from saying it's everyone else in the world. It's not me. That person's a jerk or that. What were you doing? I was calling him names and threatening to kill him. Right? So it's kind of dynamic like that. It's solid.
Yeah, and do you often, like when using that tool, I was just thinking as like a 7th grader who was maybe not not wanting to participate so much, who would be like, oh, I don't know, or I don't care, or like those types of responses. I was wondering how frequently those come about and how that would be addressed.
Yeah. So let's say a kid says, is honest and says, I don't really care. I'm going to continue to do this. As a school official, I sure want to know that, right? Now I know that this is trouble. So what do I, as a school official, need to tell the teacher? Need to set up these areas of hotspots that these two are going in. Maybe I have to remove this person who's not willing to work on a plan from this class into another class for safety reasons instead of moving the target. So there may need to be some adjustment, like, okay, you're not ready to work on that, but on the playground, this is happening. So you're not safe on that playground. We're going to have to keep you off the playground until you can figure out what it is that you want to do to ensure us that you're going to be safe. Because we really want you to be safe. And we don't want other people being harmed. That's not what school's supposed to be for.
Other questions folks have while we have Dr. Brown here?
I do have a question, but it just had my own thinking here, how I would merge the questionnaire with the restorative justice questions and questionnaires that we use on campus. And I can see the similarities, but I can see also how you can pick and choose to really meet the student where they're at in their behavior. So I was just already kind of formulating, okay, how can I bring these things together. So our campus does use the restorative justice piece. And so this is actually pretty spot on. I like it.
Cool. And I think that's important too, that these forums can become data sources. How many people are doing certain type of aggression, of bullying? Are they frequent flyers where they're continuing to do it? So maybe they do one plan, and then 2 weeks later, they're found to be bullying again. Well, let's say, Eduardo, what's going to be different about this plan than the last plan? Because I noticed that you worked hard on your last plan, but it just, for whatever reason, you weren't able to do that. What you said you wanted to do. What's going to be different about this plan? So there's this documentation that's going along, and that the school is doing something, because we want people to change their behavior, and we want them to do it earlier than later in the workplace, or wherever they end up. So this is our opportunity, I think, to really help folks. And sometimes too, I think when people are bullying, I see it as some type of mental health need that isn't being addressed. So I hope I'm really clear about that. I think it's a red flag, and it's an opportunity for us as school people, to possibly intervene here and do something, because there's an opportunity for change. But it's not going to happen through osmosis if they don't hit something and take a few steps back and say, whoa, this is different. This is impacting me. And the impact may not happen right then and there. We're kind of like seed sowers, right? We're throwing out seeds. Sometimes it may take a year for germination, for change to happen, but we're in it for the long haul.
I have a question, James. You talked about we're talking the individual and then also the school, at the school level, right? Maybe the school district. What
Mhm.
suggestions would you have for kind of assessing the climate within a school to be more of a focus on prevention and also this kind of restorative justice framework, right? To get people on board with that. And this might be a whole other talk, but just was curious where you think people should start.
Well, schools usually do a school climate survey annually. So that information, should be there. Leadership kind of dictates some of the direction, and some of the facets that are really going to be focused on. So if school bullying, let's say a principal or principals are under a lot of stress to get academic achievement up, and bullying is low on their list, folks may have to advocate and show that, kids who are bullying and being bullied are achieving less. And it's to our advantage to address it early so kids can concentrate, kids can focus, attendance can improve. So it may be a bit of a sell there, but yeah, usually schools have those school climate surveys at least once a year. So, and I think they're public. Although they may not get shown off very much. And every school is its own ecosystem. So, for better, for worse.
So I'm wondering, also with the difference in definition of peer conflict and bullying,
Mhm.
that bullying is, there was no provocation by the quote victim, whereas peer conflict, there might be provocation. There's like some um, conflict because both sides kind of both parties acted aggressively in some way?
Maybe had a disagreement about, let's say, money or someone taking someone else's items, and there's conflict going on. But the bullying is intentional harm. I'm intentional about wanting to hurt you, and not only hurt you, but do it repeatedly. And you have less power than me in defending yourself. So it's for it to be bullying, it can't just be one of those three. It really needs to be those three pieces, and you know, to check those boxes for it to be bullying. But peer conflict, if you think about a time in school where someone got upset with you, or maybe you got upset with, and you guys separated, and and maybe weren't friends, and maybe that hurt someone's feelings so much that they were crying, and they're in the office crying because of the conflict is intense to them, those feelings. It's a great time for conflict resolution there. Can we agree one person talks at a time? Can we agree that both of you want to talk about this? Yeah. Okay, who would like to begin? And then getting through that process, which, by the way, is in the slide deck. There is a conflict resolution process that I used as a school social worker, and had about a 96 to 97% success rating with it. So it's pretty structured.
Maybe one, and we'll include all those resources, including the slides, but to try to make it more usable for everybody. James, one question, maybe our
Yeah.
last question, is Mary asked before she left, was the tool evidence-based? Kind of where did it come from, and how much should folks adapt it, or can they or should they adapt it?
Yeah. So this was again based off Ed Ford, who was a MSW clinician and worked with detained youth in the state of Arizona. And he was looking for a way to teach these youth how to stop blaming everyone else in the world, but taking some responsibility about themselves and what they could do differently to get what they want without violating the rights of others. And a lot of research. He has a book out, Discipline for Home and School. So that's where the origins came, and I really tweaked it quite a bit, making it more specific for bullying versus just any behavior that violates the rights of others. It's more towards bullying. Yeah, so Ed Ford, MSW.
And Dr. Brown, are people okay adapting the form? Like, is that something that is aligned?
Yeah, yes, please. Like I say, if one person it gets helped because they went through this process, there's a lot of components to helping kids who are bullied. But punishment alone for kids who bully, I think it's just going to make them angrier and want revenge even more on folks. So providing a process for them, I think, is really important for their mental health, for their well-being.
Thank you, James. I think we've had a very robust discussion, learned a lot. James, thank you so much for coming and sharing all this, and for everybody's participation and amazing questions. So we will be posting the slides and these resources as well as this recording afterwards, but let us know if you have any questions, and really excited to see you all next month.
All right, cool. Thanks for hanging in there, everyone.
Take care.